Hey everyone, thanks for joining me. This is Breaking Strings Podcast. This is another late night episode. It's about 10 p.m. here in Germany, and I do a lot of these episodes quite late at night. So today's topic is going to be visualization because I did make a promise earlier that I would do a full episode on that. But before I jump into visualization, it occurred to me, I'm doing a lot of these episodes late at night. I do a lot of my work quite late, and sometimes I'm mentally exhausted, and in this case today, I'm pretty physically exhausted. I went on about a 6-mile hike, carried my younger son with me the entire hike, so that is very, very tiring. We did have a nice spring day here to start out with, so I got excited and kind of went all out and got super active. So when I want to be productive, but I am feeling pretty exhausted, like I'm about to hit the wall, what are some of the tricks? The first trick is that I like to work with weights, but not for a long session, like something like an hour or more. I like doing sessions that are about 10 minutes, maybe 10 to 12 minutes. It's going to be short, compact, but very, very intense. When I do this, it's a huge boost of mood, a huge boost of energy, and I feel mentally way more focused than when I went in. So it doesn't feel good when I'm starting out, but after those 10 to 12 minutes, I feel absolutely fantastic, and I'm ready to do more work. I can sometimes get about 2 extra hours of work when I'm pretty tired. There's another trick, and I've been using it a lot more recently: deliberate cold exposure. Deliberate cold exposure can range from a very, very cold shower all the way to an ice bath. The way that I do it currently is a very, very cold shower with the dial set all the way low, and I'm doing it for about 1 to 3 minutes. That 1 to 3 minutes is pretty miserable, I have to admit, but it's not about what's happening during that deliberate cold exposure, it's what happens afterward. Afterward, it's like a complete reset. So if you weren't feeling really great and you're fatigued, often when I'm fatigued, I'm not highly motivated. This deliberate cold exposure, it's a complete change, and I feel a boost of mood, feel a great boost of energy and focus. Very similar with the weights. If I combine the weight training session and the deliberate cold exposure together, very good. And I've used it in times when I'm highly jet lagged, sleep deprived, and sometimes it is important to get some sleep. It is important to just go to sleep and complete your work, maybe by getting up earlier the next morning. But you can't do that every single time. I mean, sometimes you just need to get some extra work done for the day, and these 2 techniques will certainly help you do that. So if you're struggling with that and you want to be productive a little bit later at night, try those 2 things. Send me a message. Let me know if those 2 things work for you. I know that that's not a musical recommendation. It sounds like a more health and fitness podcast type of recommendation. But hey, these things work for me as a musician, so I am going to mention it on a music podcast. So now we dive into visualization. It's an ancient practice, actually, and it's rooted in yoga and other forms of meditation. Sports psychologists have also used it with athletes. It's obvious that an athlete needs to take breaks for their physique, for their body, to everything to heal, to make sure that they don't get an injury. And I think sports psychologists noticed that they could visualize all of the movements that they would need from their sport on the days off, and that would be sufficient. It would be just as good as a drill or a practice or scrimmage that they would have where they would be physically taxing their body. So what are some common problems that visualization solves? Memory slips. Memory slips can be a common occurrence for musicians, particularly when they're performing in front of an audience and they're really, really nervous. These slips can happen when there's a temporary loss of muscle memory. Why do these losses of muscle memory happen? Why do we all of a sudden freeze up? I think that what happens is that when we're playing in front of an audience, we can sometimes play with a little bit more tension than we're used to playing at home. And when you're doing that, the increased tension or increased strain in the fingers it feels different, and certain stretches, certain shifts, certain jumps, certain chords, they just don't feel the same the way that they did at home. So now you can kind of get lost and you're working off of the muscle memory, and then all of a sudden it just doesn't feel right to you. So of course you have a pause, and your brain doesn't know the next spot that you need to go to because your brain has not quite formed a connection between the patterns and the sound of the music. Again, you were sort of used to going off of the muscle memory and playing the entire piece and kind of listening to yourself after the fingers had accomplished the task. You need to get yourself into a position where you know the music so well and you know which pattern matches up with the exact point in the piece, the sound of the piece, that you basically can will yourself to play through a certain situation, even if your fingers don't feel it. Like if your fingers are not there, the muscle memory is not there, you need to be able to will yourself to complete the passage. It's sort of like an insurance for making sure that you don't have a really bad slip in the piece. So here's how I visualize. I picture myself holding the guitar exactly in the same seating position as I always hold it. So I'm really seeing myself with the guitar first-person view mode. I picture myself completing the left-hand fingerings in real time. If there's something in my right hand that needs attention, like something very intricate, something very special, I'm going to dedicate some special time just for the right hand. I will say that in my experience, it's important to get good at visualizing way ahead of the event. So if you try to do this as a last-minute kind of thing, yeah, you're going to be in for a really wild ride, because if you find out that you're not really good at it or you're not very accurate, there's mistakes and things like that, those inaccuracies will work their way into the performance for sure. So you have to be doing this way ahead of time and weeks ahead of time. Like I said before, visualization equals confidence. So if we visualize ourselves performing in the actual space that we're going to play in, that is a huge boost for us. Sometimes I will just find pictures of the space that I'm going to perform in if I haven't been there before. So when you visualize with great detail, not just the fingerings, not just everything that you have to do with the instrument, but now you're visualizing the actual space that you're in. When you walk out there in real life, well, what happens? The shock of being in that space, it's kind of muffled, right? It's like in your mind, you've already done it. So you're just repeating something that you've already done in your mind. It's a lot easier. And just as a final note, visualization is actually helpful in the area of sleep. It's obvious that sleep is very important, and it helps you practice and perform better. In fact, everybody recommends better sleep, better sleep. Okay, well, this is a strange recommendation because actually, if you visualize your piece when you are kind of tossing and turning and you are having a tough time getting to sleep, well, there's two things that can happen. Both are good. The first thing that can happen is that if you're not actually falling asleep, you can visualize your music and get some extra practicing in. So you're at least being productive instead of just rolling around and waiting and waiting and waiting to finally fall asleep. Another thing that might happen, and this often happens with me, is you'll start visualizing the music in such great detail, and then all of a sudden, you fall asleep. So please try this technique and let me know how it goes for you. I'm hoping that visualization gives you some confidence, and I'm hoping that it just frees you up to enjoy the playing. That's the final goal. The final goal is to kind of get rid of all of these extra obstructions and worries and just enjoy what you're doing. Thank you guys, and please join me for the next episode.